Hello and welcome to GreenFleet Talks. My name is Kate Armitage and I'm your host for our discussion today. And I'm delighted to be joined by Beverley Wise, Sales Director for the UK and Ireland at Webfleet Solutions. Hello, Beverley.
Hi, Kate.
Hi. At the end of this month, the 26th Conference of the Parties, better known as COP26, opens in Glasgow, where the world's leaders will come together to agree actions and targets on the long-term goal to become net zero by 2050. Today, Beverley and I are discussing the role that zero-emission vehicles will play on this global stage, where the UK can take the lead, and the role that Webfleet Solutions is playing in this transition. Beverley, COP26 is a pivotal moment for world leaders, businesses and communities to come together to encourage tangible actions to tackle climate emergency. What, in your eyes, will make a successful COP26?
I think that's a really good question, Kate, because I think to get all of the leaders together and to get them to come out with some tangible actions that they are all agreed with and are willing to take will be a major step forward. I think every country has a different view on sustainability and the climate emergency. And I think having this here in what I believe is a country that is determined to move forward with the zero, or to get to the zero emissions, and to really look to help our climate and the emergency that is not only emerging but is actually real, then I think if we can get them to agree some tangible steps and actually deliver those actions, that will be a real benefit for us. And therefore, that would then be, in my eyes, success for the COP26 meeting.
And as you quite rightly pointed out, Beverley, every country has a slightly different agenda and different objectives. So to get agreement on what those tangible actions are and actually get on with the delivery is a big ask.
I think it is, because unfortunately it's not just the leaders from those countries. They then have to take that back and get their governments or their parties or their different departments to then enact those actions that they've agreed to take. And it to a little bit, I guess it's very difficult to herd everybody in the same direction.
Yeah, well, I agree. And thinking about what you've said there about it's not just the governments, but it's the individuals and the businesses within each country. What is Webfleet Solutions doing as a business and with your employees to support this goal of achieving net zero?
Okay, so there's a number of things that we're doing. Firstly, we've just recently had a mobility conference, and part of that mobility conference was actually about electrification of vehicles and how we're really looking to help businesses review how they achieve that full electrification over the coming years. And whilst an awful lot of companies in the country are already on that journey, there are a lot of smaller companies that maybe have not thought about that. And part of what we are doing is actually helping to help them on that journey, because we have partnered with Just Dig It to actually look at reforesting Tanzania to offset carbon emissions, etc., and to help make a greener planet and bring more oxygen to the world effectively. So yeah, so with us as employees, we're doing that. That's a major global initiative that Webfleet have taken. In fact, actually, as being part of Bridgestone, this week for us is actually Sustainability Week. So we're actually looking at everything that we can do around sustainability, from how we develop tires at Bridgestone, how we develop tires for electric vehicles, use less rubber, which of course is taken from trees in the first place, and really looking at the paper usage that we have, the waste that we deliver, how we recycle everything from the tires through to our boxes, what we do with the components, how we dispose of that within the environment. So we're very much aware of our impact, and how we minimize our impact on the climate emergency.
That's really interesting, Beverley. And I think I've spoken to a few people in the last week who are part of an organisation which has a parent company. There's a wider ecosystem around their business and around their sustainability targets, and it is great to hear that Webfleet Solutions and Bridgestone are really focused on that sustainability element. And in thinking about what you're doing as a business, and we've mentioned that one of the key objectives of COP26 is to speed the uptake of electric vehicles. How are you helping your customers? How are you helping the businesses that you work with and the public sector move towards electric vehicles?
Okay, so one of the things that we've developed is a fleet electrification report, which actually looks at the vehicles that you're currently running and looks at the mileages that they're doing to identify what percentage of your fleet could today move into an electric vehicle. We're also within our platform enabling you to see the benefits from those electric vehicles in terms of how much charge have they got, where's your next charging point, what vehicles are going to be able to make that journey, how much charge a vehicle's got sort of at the end of the day, so you can become more efficient. So if you're planning your journeys and your jobs and you've got a 300-mile round trip, which vehicle is already charged, ready to go, and which vehicle is the optimum to be able to take that. So really trying to work with companies to make sure that they optimize those, and also being able to provide them with reports of, who's charged a vehicle, who's plugged the vehicle in to be charged, is it on charge? And actually every quarter we're releasing further developments on EV reporting within our platform. So you'll be able to see, what's the optimum charging cost, how much is it costing if a driver is charging at home, on a public network, or at the office network. So you can start to really optimize where it's best for people to charge their vehicles as well. So, we're also working with EVROS, who is again, a European provider around installing more electric vehicle charging points at a number of the Bridgestone equity partners. Yeah. Which again will help. They're not so dominant in the UK, but will be coming. But we're also looking to work with a number of charging providers to ensure that we get their charging sites on the maps within vehicles, so that people know where they can go and charge. So they're not driving around trying to look for somewhere that's got an electric charging point. And being able to pull all of that information into our platform, and then being able to help companies understand what their kilowatt per hour cost is, as opposed to their pence per mile or pence per kilometre charges for diesel or fuel.
Oh, Beverley, you're really, this is right into my sweet spot. So I find you've said so many things there, because I think people it's understood that you have a total cost of ownership calculation when you're thinking about switching out an ICE vehicle for an EV, but what you're offering is much more about the in-life vehicle management, and there is a lot of behavioural and process changes that need to come with an electric fleet, and giving visibility to a fleet manager of what's the state of charge of the vehicles, and helping to plan when they need to be recharged. But the other thing that you said that really was music to my ears was this helping understand the cost of charging, because it's not very tangible. It's not like going to a petrol station forecourt where you can see how much it is and it's on the receipt. With electric, it's less tangible, but it's also there's wide variations in that pricing. And I should add, in the next month or 2 months, we're really going to start to see that coming through in electricity bills as well, because we know that we've got price increases coming.
Well, I think that's a really good point, because we're seeing energy companies unfortunately fail at this point in time, due to the price rises that there are in both gas and electricity. And I think there is such a wide variation in terms of the cost of electricity per kilowatt, and what is the optimum time to to charge.
Yep.
And I think we have to be mindful of the fact that if maybe not now, but in the future, there are going to be big demands on the national grid. And in fact, I was reading just the other day that they are talking about actually not allowing people to charge at certain times because of the drain on the grid. Now, whether that will come to fruition or not, I've no idea. But at the moment, the biggest uptake in EV is actually through consumers, because they're probably slightly more aware of the impact to them and the cost to them. But I think, as fleets start to become more engaged in that, one of the biggest things I think that is stopping fleets becoming quicker, well, there's a number of things at the moment, is range anxiety. But at the moment, where we're facing a global microchip shortage as well, which is delaying lead times for all vehicles, we're having to run diesel or ICE vehicles for longer than maybe we would have done. And I think there is a certain frustration that we can't actually speed up the adoption of EVs in fleet because of this. We've got a number of new sort of disruptor manufacturers coming in with people like Arrival and Volta and various other manufacturers who are looking to break into that environment and are building only electric vehicles, which I think is, an interesting area to watch over time. The main manufacturers, of course, are also, picking up and really seeing this as a real opportunity. But I think over time, and certainly, the range anxiety today is not the same as the range anxiety, 2 or 3 years ago.
Gosh, no.
It's going to improve.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at sort of LCVs and trucks in particular, the LCV cycle, if you're changing a vehicle, an LCV now, you're probably going to keep that for maybe 4 or 5 years. You're going to have to make an EV decision next time. And actually, why not start to do it now so you get more used to it? And it is about the whole life cost. It's not just the purchase cost. It's actually about, what's it going to be worth when you're finished with it? How much is it actually going to cost you over life? What's the electric charging point cost that you may want to install in your own operation at your own site? So, there's a lot to take into account, and we can help with that.
Yeah.
We can help you understand. I can't say that we can help you install it, but we can help understand those, the ramifications of the decisions that you're making.
Yeah, and to just really raise the awareness and the visibility of the things that we should be tracking and we should be understanding, because as the percentage of the fleet becomes zero emission, so it may not be electric, but let's assume mostly electric, then the focus on how much you're spending on electricity will shift. As your ICE fuel bill goes down, then suddenly your cost is here.
Your electric bill is going to go up.
Managed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
so I think it's being out. Sorry, I think it's also actually, because the biggest thing at the moment is, if you're running a fleet, you want to know the cost of your whole fleet. Yeah, and if you're starting mixing ICE with electric, how do you do that? How do you bring that all together? And that's where our platform, which is able to carry both electric vehicles and ICE vehicles, can give you that overall cost. And you'll see your carbon emissions, your footprint will reduce as well over time. So it's all about, giving you the total picture.
Yeah. So important. You don't want to be running 2 different fleets with 2 different systems and 2 different methodologies. It ultimately is just another fuel.
Yes, it is. And we're looking at we've been talking about hydrogen since before the millennium started, and whether that will pick up and come, they're talking about maybe that, and CNG for trucks. We're also looking at autonomous vehicles and what that's going to run on. So we need to make sure that we can capture all that in one platform, so that actually you're only looking in one place. You're not having to take myriads of reports and put them together to understand the cost to your business.
Totally agree. So I wanted to widen the conversation out a little bit. So we know that all eyes will be on the UK as host to COP26, and we've made this commitment to the delivery on vehicle electrification. But what more can the UK do to lead the way with the demonstration of EV charging infrastructure combined with clean and innovative vehicle technology?
I think the UK are doing a lot. I mean, the government are already offering grants for installation of charging points and the running of those. They've already committed to installing, I think it's 1,800 rapid charging points. And I think for me, that is the single area that we need to really consider, is around the infrastructure of the charging points, not just in the cities. And we're already doing things like ultra low emission zones, charging, for businesses to go into the cities. But for me, it's about using that revenue that you generate from those tolls to actually put it back into the infrastructure to support the move to EVs. So I think, we need to look at EVs, not just in the cities, but also, on major A roads, making sure that that we've got stations that are for EVs. I think the time to charge is equally important, and that comes from the manufacturers, but also the charging. If you think that you need to plan your journey, and if you do need to charge, you've got to plan in probably an extra 30 to 45 minutes on your journey. So how can we make sure that we've got sufficient charging sites and points that people are not going to have to queue? Because you've got half a dozen vehicles. If you go to a service station or you go to a motorway services at the moment, they've probably got a number of Tesla chargers, and then they've maybe got sort of 6 to 10 units. As the number of electric vehicles increases, you don't want to pull up into a fuel service station and have to wait for 45 minutes before you can plug in. So I think the number of EV charging sites has to increase. I think we need to give incentives for people to be able to have the charging points at home. I think we need to watch the charging prices. So, what are we doing as a UK to make sure that we're leveling out the costs of electric charging? So how can you identify that? So that it's going to cost you 9, 10, 11 pence per kilowatt. It doesn't really matter what the cost is, but making sure that we can understand that. So I think we need to look at that. I think we need to have some regulation around the charging points, because I think there are so many companies starting up at the moment. I think there will be a consolidation over the next 8 years that we've got to go to 2030, and we need to make sure that we are working, in the right legislation, that we've got good quality EV charging point providers, and that they have got a good nationwide, and we've got a good nationwide network. And that's, I think, the challenge at the moment, and that's where I think we need to lead the way.
I think, and it's on, I know that it's very much on OZEV's agenda. There is regulation already around electrical standards and around safety and around the communications of the units. So we're partly the way there, but the consumer experience side, which OZEV is talking about, and you've touched on it, which is the pricing, which is the ability to access the infrastructure, is challenging, and of course it's very difficult to mandate reliability. If and that has been a challenge. Putting a charge point in the ground is one thing, but making sure that the uptime is good and that it's well maintained, and that an engineer goes out to it in a timely fashion, it is equally important, I think.
And I think for businesses, if you're charging out in the public, there are so many different companies at the moment with a different app for every company. That how does a business driver make sure that he's got all those apps, so when he decides he needs to go and charge, that he gets to somewhere and he's got the right app to be able to apply to charge his vehicle. I think the other thing that I've heard, I haven't seen, but I have heard, is that a number of the charging sites require you to pay a minimum amount. like you can fill up and you can put £1 worth of fuel in. At the moment, you can't just do that. It's a minimum of £5 of charging. Now, you may not need all of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a well. The answer is, if you're public charging, you probably will need all of that because of the access fees.
Yeah.
I think I think, and this is quite normal in the same way that if you pay at a pump, you put your card in and it pre-authorizes £99.
Yeah.
So the same thing.
But you don't have to use £99.
Exactly. No. And the same thing happens with the EV car. So,
Okay. So I have heard differently. I have heard of some people whereby it's taken a fiver and they've only needed, £2 worth of charge.
Maybe,
so we'll see.
but
I guess it's standardization, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's, I guess, where I'm coming from is sort of, we need to make sure that these things are standard, that there is a standard application across all of the EV charging companies.
Or at least highly transparent.
Clarity. Absolutely.
The minute you plug your car in, you're going to be charged a £3 access fee.
It's a bit like using an ATM machine, isn't it?
Exactly.
You know before you use one at a service station that you're going to get charged a service fee. Yeah. You then have the choice.
Well, we could we literally could talk all day about that consumer experience, but I wanted to ask you about the EV Rally of Scotland that GreenFleet is hosting in November. So it runs from the 8th to the 12th of November. It's a 5-day rally that runs for about 1,200 miles around Scotland, as the name suggests. And I'm delighted that Webfleet Solutions is a supporting partner for EVROS. Can you tell us a little bit more about your involvement?
Yeah, we're absolutely delighted to be able to sponsor and work with GreenFleet on this. We are going to be installing our solutions in the vehicles that are going to go around Scotland. We're going to be able to provide reports on the energy that's been used, the distances that have been travelled, and also the driver behaviour. So we're looking to sort of provide a league table, if you like, on people who have done, and so therefore who's charging well. But it's great because it brings that sort of gamification to it as well, around who's driving really well, who's using the least amount of electricity on those journeys, etc. But yeah, in order to be able to help you to understand the effects of the electric vehicle and the charging that comes out of it and the kilowatts per hour. So yeah, all the vehicles, in fact, I think they're being installed maybe next week or maybe within the next couple of weeks. So we'll be putting our equipment in there. We'll be meeting you, or somebody from Webfleet will be meeting at various stops, because you've got stops overnight, of course, because you're not driving 1,200 miles non-stop. So yeah, we're really delighted to be able to sponsor that, and think it's really important to run that in line with COP26 to show the effectiveness of electric vehicles around Scotland, which will obviously take into account lots of areas that maybe are not quite so prolific with their EV charging points. But actually, it will be, the planning of this will be absolutely key, and that's where we can help, so that you understand how much charge, and will you be able to continue the next day, or do you need to charge overnight, and how much charge do you need? So yeah, really delighted. I think it'll be great, and great to see the vehicles out there, and we're really pleased and excited to be.
We're all looking forward to it, and there's been a great deal of excitement, and the reason I pulled a face in horror is because I'm driving one of the vehicles on
You'll be
day
fine,
one.
Kate. I'm quite sure that you will be a wonderful driver. But this is about education.
Yeah.
So this, for everybody, in life, anything that you do, any training courses that you can go on, if you take something from that, it's worth doing. And if we can help educate drivers to be more efficient in their driving style, that's what it's about. It's not about saying you're a good or bad driver. It's about improving and educating people to be able to drive more efficiently and more consistently, which will give you the best results.
And with that element of gamification as well, I think it does help motivate people and focus people. I certainly would appreciate that feedback in terms of, I think I'm doing the right things, but am I doing the right things?
And also not just that, but also, how can I improve?
Yeah.
So am I doing the right things? Well, you could improve on idling, or you could improve on this. Okay, how do I do that? And I think that's where that education piece comes in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Beverley, that is about all we've got time for, I'm afraid. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I'd like to thank Webfleet Solutions for joining GreenFleet Talks.
No problem. Really enjoyed it. I think it's definitely a subject that's going to continue to gain momentum over the next few years. Thank you very much, Kate.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
please tune in to GF365 again soon.